Did you do that?
I did do that.
Oh, okay. Did it say record to the cloud or record locally?
It said record to the cloud.
Hmm.
Hi, welcome in.
Welcome, everyone. Wow, it's like they open the doors and everybody runs in all at once. I'm going to give it a few seconds here, everybody get a chance to sign in. Well, we're kind of giving everybody a minute here. If you have something interesting to share about yourself or some specific questions you might have about, ways to use AI in the library for students who are studying, doing homework, or looking for help with, classwork that they were struggling with. I'd love to be addressing those as we move on. I'm going to talk a little bit about CK12 and who we are here in just a minute. But we're going to be discussing some ways to offer free resources to students who need help outside of the classroom or at home, and they don't have access always to someone who's immediately available. So share where you're from maybe, or what your questions might be in the chat. And Jen is going to be focusing on answering those while I yammer away in the background. That'll be my job.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to hearing questions and hopefully answering them. Some of the ones that we get, if I think will be great for everyone to hear the answer to, I'm going to bring them up to Larame so he can answer them live.
All right, well, let's get started. I'm Larame Spence. I'm head of content at CK12, and this is Jen.
Hi, I'm Jen. I am a science content specialist at CK12.
I've been with CK12 for, I don't know, about more than a decade now. We're a nonprofit foundation that's privately funded by a philanthropic uh, financier. All of our content is free. The goal is to make sure that no student anywhere lacks for the opportunity to, to better themselves and to learn about things that are important for their lives based on financial concerns. We want to offer the best possible curriculum, the best possible resources to students all over the world, and make sure the students aren't kept from accessing those things because of financial concerns. I've been developing content and working primarily on the math team for quite a while now. My is a kind of a recent transplant to California. I worked remotely for a long time in Colorado. But now I'm thrilled to be working with my team kind of in person here in Mountain View area. We have an amazing bunch of people that are incredibly dedicated to the foundation. It really is a fantastic thing to know I'm part of a group whose goal is to create free things for students to use that help them learn, and for teachers to use that help them teach, and for tutors and parents to use to help students understand difficult concepts, and know that I'm never trying to sell someone something they don't need or upsell because it's good for my bottom line. It's an amazing thing to be part of a team where our goal really is to try and make the world better. So I hope that we're in a position here where I can show some of you some ways to help take advantage of that for the benefit of the students out there that need it. So that's who we are and what we do. This conference is about empowering students with free AI-powered homework help. We have a new tool, new-ish, a couple years old now, and I talk a little about that. But the goal behind that tool is to be a resource that students can use when they don't have help from a human being, and that's kind of what our target is going to be here. I'm going to kind of move through the slides in my deck here. They don't need us to start the recording. We already did that. Obviously, you already know probably from previous meetings that this is sponsored by the Future of AI. And then our topic is how students can get help outside of class. And you can see the flexi.org address there and the QR code. You're welcome to go to Flexi anywhere along the way here. Check it out for yourself. It is free. The only reason we ask people to register for it, particularly as students, is so that we can help sort of customize what they're doing as they move along, and we can help students see when they're progressing, but there is never any charge for it. So the kind of the point here behind what we do is that students aren't always in school. They don't always have teachers available to help them answer questions or to help them get unstuck when they're stuck. Parents aren't always in a position to help students with homework or with studies because maybe it was something they haven't done for 20 years, which I know was one of my problems. Or maybe, that we all have lives too. We're coming home from work late and we're tired, and trying to put aside everything else and focus on our kids' homework isn't an easy thing to do. So our goal at CK12 with Flexi was to kind of offer an opportunity for other people to help. And I think as a position in a school library, to be able to sit down with a student and show them resources like this are available and are free, and show them how to make use of them as a student is a fantastic opportunity. It's something that I wish we could be involved in more, to tell you the truth, because I think sometimes it's hard to work with individual parents, and teachers are already working on things in the classroom. So a librarian is a fantastic resource for students who need access to something like this. Let's go look here. So when we started building Flexi, the first thing we did actually was spend about 6 months with live tutors. We actually had people that worked with students through a chat interface on our site, and students would come to the site, and sort of a select number of them that were asking questions could come in and ask live questions through the chat, and our live tutors would help answer them. And we observed what those live tutors did. And these were some of the things that we documented that were particularly powerful and particularly important to the tutors, as far as the skills they wanted to use and as far as the things that made a difference in the students' learning. And so we took all of these things to heart and built Flexi specifically to address them in a digital manner as much as we possibly could. We wanted to replicate these to the best of our ability in a digital platform. One of the differences between Flexi and, say, a general purpose AI, I'm sure you're going to hear a lot about those. You probably already have today, especially, but is that Flexi was built from the ground up by our own organization as an education first AI. Flexi started basically as a very high-powered librarian, to be honest, that had immediate access to all of CK12's lessons, CK12's books, CK12's videos, interactives. And one of the challenges we had was that when students were needing access to those things to help them answer questions, they would ask the same question in 100 different ways. And in order for us to make the links between the question the student was asking and the content we had was a real challenge. The only, our best option was to have humans go through and see all the questions the students asked and say, okay, the next time a student says, what's 2 plus 2, point them to the lesson that talks about adding one-digit numbers. And the tool got smarter over time, and it did a very good job. So for the first couple of years of Flexi, particularly in science, Flexi was a very capable tutor at guiding students towards CK12 resources without any other kind of input. Then GPT came along and the other LLM AI options came along, and we were able to incorporate that ability to interpret the way students ask questions, specific questions, and identify them as general questions, so that we could not only answer the specific need the student had, but we could also then link them back to the human written, vetted, professional content that CK12 also has that refers to the same thing. So we were able to take the thousands of human created lessons that we'd already had, and the millions and billions of questions that we'd tracked over time, and use that to flesh out Flexi with this sort of smarter way of understanding the questions students asked.
Larame, we've got a great question
Sure.
from Jen. Could you tell us a bit about how Flexi compares to Khanmigo?
Oh, sure.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. I have only limited experience with Kamigo directly, although I have played with it some. The first thing that struck me, and the thing that I've heard from students that frustrates them about using Kamigo, is, to be fair, a perfectly valid sort of difference of philosophy, I think. And that is, I believe that students are quite capable online, that they're going to find a way to get help with their homework regardless. So they're going to find ways to cheat if cheating is what they're going to do. They're going to find some way to get the answer to the question and just write it down. Conmigo's concern, again, like I said, valid, is that they didn't want to be any resource for any answer to a question. So I found, and the students that I've talked to have found Conmigo to be particularly cagey when you ask it for help with a specific question. It's, well, did you think about this? Did you think about that? And like I said, perfectly valid philosophy, but the students that I worked with were frustrated at using that, and so ended up ditching that and going off to something else where they could just type in and get answers. Our philosophy is that Flexi will help a student get the right answer, but she will guide the student through step by step to understanding how that answer comes about and helping them understand when they understand the process to answer the question on their own. So instead of just only guiding them around, we also guide them around. And then it also gives them the ability that they can test to see when they have the answer right. That was something that really frustrated the students I talked to also, was that they never knew if they actually got the right answer to something because they weren't ever allowed to just say, is this correct? So I'd say from a discussion standpoint, that's one of the bigger differences. The other big one is that whenever Flexi answers a question, we specifically say, essentially, here's the direct answer, and then also here are the CK12 resources that you can use to vet that answer and verify that it's accurate and to understand how we came about that answer. I think those are, well, and of course, obviously, all of the multimedia. Flexi surfaces multimedia all the time, and I think that's kind of a big difference between Flexi and most other chatbots. So, and on that note, obviously, that multimedia comes from, as we see here, some 3,500 different math and science concepts. When CK12 started splitting our content into concepts about 6 or 7 years ago, we built the idea of the Flexbook 2, which was sort of a smaller lessons, each tied in with multimedia that had other options. And then we sort of built into those lessons directly the interactives, the videos, and so forth. And now Flexi has access to each of those things individually. So a student doesn't have to go through an entire lesson to get an answer or a resource for something. Flexi could do that for them and just surface the part that's most directly applicable to their needs and that is most effective at helping them understand. I'm going to show an example here. For any of you who've used GPT or Claude or any of the other big AIs, this probably looks very familiar. You can use it. Like I said, every student probably has figured out you can just type in a math question and get an answer, and it'll give you the answer and it'll show you the steps to solve it, but they're all just text on a page and they're all formatted however the LLM thinks is important, right? A Flexi response will also give you a direct answer to your question. It is formatted very carefully by our team. Part of our design for interacting with that is to make things as understandable and as quick for a student to follow through as possible from a teacher's point of view. But then Flexi also, like I said, has this immediate link to CK12 resources that are human written, human vetted, and back up the AI generated answer for every question a student has. And I think it's a good idea for them to learn to look for vetting for answers that they're pulling from and answers they're learning from, make sure that they make sense. Flexi will also serve as videos. If a student says, I want to see a video on something, or if we think a video is a particularly good response, Flexi will surface a video that we have from our library that answers their question directly. Interactives, you can get an interactive response from Flexi directly, and I'll show this specifically. And then Flexi offers in-lesson help, and this is something I'm going to demo here in a minute also, but when a student is reading through a text lesson on CK12, Flexi will be there with them and they can answer specific questions about the contents of that lesson in line and highlight things that they want to specifically talk about, and Flexi will respond to it immediately. When a student understands something or has a question answered for them, they can also ask Flexi for a challenge question. And the challenge question can either be a one-off, a single question like this that Flexi will surface in a chat, or she can recommend a set of what we call adaptive practice questions that help a student practice what they know and then learn Socratically. Every time a student answers one of these questions, they get immediate feedback about why an answer is correct or incorrect, and Flexi learns a little bit more about where that student is so that she can recommend what else the student may need to study. And then if a student asks a question, asks for one of those challenge questions, and then is convinced that they are not quite convinced that they understand how to solve it, they can ask Flexi to walk them through it step by step. And Flexi will actually break down the initial question for them into pieces and ask the individual pieces one at a time. and help the student understand bit by bit how to get to the answer of a longer question. And then a particularly useful tool for teachers for in classrooms or outside of classrooms is the ability for Flexi to recommend where to best focus their time. So if a teacher has 4 or 5 students that have been using Flexi on their own for homework, that teacher can then leverage that information in the classroom to see where those students might need a particular amount of support or recommended additional challenging content. And that's a free service that teachers have access to if the students are using Flexi on their own. Now here's a picture of what Flexi looks like live. I'm actually going to switch to that same live version here. And I'm going to play just a little bit here for your benefit with what it looks like as a student comes in to go to just ck12.org/flexi, which is that link, or flexi.org, the one I showed at the beginning there. I'm going to try a couple of things here just for examples. I think I showed you something about interactives. There's one for alternate angles. You'll see that Flexi immediately returns something that the students can interact with and learn about alternate angles. They can see from the vocabulary in the actual answer. They don't necessarily have to understand what a transversal is. They can see what it is just by hovering over it with their mouse. If a student, for instance, doesn't necessarily speak English as a first language, they can ask Flexi to translate that. Let's do a fun one. Let's do Croatian. I don't speak Croatian. But you'll see the interactive is still functional. Yeah, still has all the same capabilities as it does on the English version. But now it's written in Croatian. And one of the neat things about Flexi is if, for instance, I do speak Croatian and I ask Flexi a question or ask her to clarify something in a given language, she defaults back to responding in that language. Oops, I guess I had this set back to English, but yes, she will default to respond in that language. Maybe it was because I copied it from over here. But if a student actually types the question in a given language, she defaults to responding back in that language. Do we have any new questions there, Jen, before I keep marching on here?
Yeah, we've got a couple of great questions. So Jen asked about ELLs or people with languages, which you've just shown, which is awesome. Erica had a question about how teachers can get these insights. How do they link their accounts of students?
Sure, absolutely. So there's several. Let me address a couple of things. Now, both of these questions are kind of linked to CK12's Flexbook. So if I just go to ck12.org, the homepage here, you'll see that there's a list of Flexbooks here, and these are all free. These are all like the ones that are marked community contributed were things that we actually helped a third-party resource put together, and we highlight on our site. The ones that are not marked community contributed are ones that we actually had written by our own team members. But if I choose, I'm going to choose math just because I used to be a math guy. If I select a lesson in here, any one of them, you'll see Flexi pops up on the left here. Now, there were a couple of the first things someone pointed out was the language issue. I have installed the Google Translation extension, Google Translate extension, which I think is pretty common. If I choose that translation extension, you'll see here that because we've worked with Google on implementing that, this is Hindi, for instance. You'll see all of the buttons, all the commands, all the navigation, everything translates into Hindi. Anything that isn't actually part of an image, the text in an image is about the only thing that doesn't get translated into whatever language is going to be default for your students. So it's very, very accessible for ELL students for certain. And then again, along the way, if I have, say, a specific section where I want to know something, I don't understand what EMS stands for emergency medical services means. So I can discuss that with Flexi. It'll automatically bring in the context and highlight the section I asked about here. And then I can ask Flexi to translate that to Spanish or Russian or whatever language I want to know. And I can ask Flexi about just about anything about this. Have Flexi explain to me what it means, right? And Flexi will immediately respond to exactly what I highlighted in a lesson. And this is a pretty neat tool that I'm going to show you something else with here in a minute. But I think this is a great way to sort of extend the capability into the ELL. And I'm sorry, what was Erica's question?
Yeah, sorry. Erica's question was, how do teachers get insights from their students? How do they link their accounts together?
So as a teacher, I'm signed in here as a student, but as a teacher, you'll have a section up here that'll say, my class is like this. And when you go to that, my classes, there'll be a code, and there's just it's a 5-digit alphanumeric code that you give your students. And if they have a uh, free sign up with CK12, they can join your class with that code. And with that code in place, you get access to all of those resources. And I can show you an example of what they might look like if I tell CK12 that I'm a teacher. Sign in as me. And now if I go to one of those books, there's the demo of what those lessons look like up here under class insights. So as a teacher, I can try a demo class. And here's where my students will show up on that same grid. It shows the teacher, what their engagement level is on a graph against their mastery level for that specific subject. So I can see, for instance, David here has been engaged really well. He's been putting in a lot of effort trying to understand the lesson, but he's still at a beginning level of understanding. So he's a student who probably would benefit from some personal attention. Whereas maybe Christine, sure, her engagement level is down around 0. She's also still beginning. It's more of a situation where, as a teacher, I would say, why don't you go read through the lesson? maybe watch the video that's associated. Encourage her to try a little bit on her own, so that you can spend some time specifically with David, who has been putting in the effort first. Annie or Sally up here are both in a position where maybe they're ready for some more challenging things, and CK12 Flexi will give you some ideas for what they might want to move on to do. It tells you about the prerequisite concepts for students who are struggling, specifically ones that the students might move on to if they are looking for a greater challenge. That might be those ones on top. So all of this data is for free, freely available to teachers. They just need to start a free class. Again, they're not paying for it either. Set up a free class and then invite the students to their class. They have access to this. Yes, absolutely true. Yeah. I saw Jen's comment there about determining effort they made for test prep. And one of Flexi's new tools is that ability to help students prep for tests. Um, I haven't used it much. In fact, it may not even be in oh, here it is, yeah. So students can now actually come in and ask Flexi specifically to help them prep for a test. And they just tell Flexi what they're studying, and she'll come up with our adaptive practice questions, go through those questions with them, and then kind of give them an idea of the things they probably need to study a little bit more and the things they seem to have a solid grasp on. So yeah, it's a very good tool for that.
Yeah, what I like most about that, if you don't mind me butting in,
Please.
is that it gives a personalized response based on how they answered each question that they were provided in the concept. So it gives them like a very specific to them breakdown of things that they might need to improve on, and how to do that before they then go and attempt that test again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let me make sure I get through whatever slides we have left here so that I don't miss anything big. Where I have a really quick video I was going to show you guys of how you could upload a course to CK12. I'm going to go through this part pretty quick here because we're running out of time. Basically, these are all things that Flexi can help students navigate through, help students learn from. And then I'm going to have Jen, if she doesn't mind, paste a link to this video. It's on YouTube. It's just 2 minutes long. But one of the interesting things that we can do at CK12, because it's an open platform and because it's free to use, if students have something that either they were given by a teacher or a teacher has something that they want their students to be able to study on their own, you can very quickly, and like I said, in about 2 minutes, and I'll let you watch your own copy of this video when we're done here so I can just explain what you're going to see. In about 2 minutes, you'll see that I take a text file, I copy the text, I paste it into a free book framework in CK12. And then just by pasting it in and telling the book what the subject is, the students have access to all of the tools that they would have in any of our other books, like this vocabulary where you hover over and it highlights, like the ability for a student to highlight the text and discuss with Flexi using our highlight tool here. If they highlight anything and then tell Flexi they want to discuss it, that's what that thing I showed you before. All of these tools are immediately available with any content that you store, that you upload to CK12. And because it's because it's free. You can decide to share it with the rest of the world. You can decide not to. You can decide to keep it on your own. But the platform doesn't cost anything for you to upload that. And I think it's a very powerful tool for students to use for studying. Just going to go past the video because I don't think we have time to watch through it here. If you want to test on your own and see what this feels like, I think this is kind of a neat example. This was the default text file that I stole from my wife, actually, to build that demo. And it was a very kind of middle school or high school level study of photosynthesis. And I kind of cheated. I converted a bunch of the text to something that was a little bit harder to understand. That link on the screen there takes you to the CK12 version of that I uploaded. And as someone who may not be super familiar with photosynthesis, I think it gives you a nice perspective of what it's like to be a student who knows the general topic they're studying, but may not understand all the vocabulary. And you can see firsthand what it's like to interact with that content, all of these words. Like if a student, all they had was this basic Google Doc, then they're going to be highlighting things and copying and going to Google and trying to search these things step by step to understand what they are. Or by going to that link on that you were given there, they can see Flexi walking them through those things piece by piece, and you can understand sort of the power yourself of having Flexi at your side to study. Okay, that's our quick overview of what's here. There's about a gazillion. And CK12 is an incredibly broad platform. Trying to narrow it down to the things that just fit a given audience is pretty challenging. We have subjects anywhere from math and science and English that we have directly written ourselves to some, I want to say 180,000, I believe the number is now, individual Flexbooks that have been written by other users all over the country, teachers all over the world, teachers, schools that specifically dedicate their curriculum all uploaded to CK12 and then shared. If you go to the CK12 schools page, for instance, from our homepage, if I just go to ck12.org, you can see, come on, thumb. You can see some of the schools that use CK12 directly by state, and all of the things that those schools have written, all of their books that they've shared are freely available to any school, any teacher all over the world to use their version of it. And these all have those same powerful tools available from CK12 that are free for anyone to use. So lots and lots of different subjects that maybe we don't particularly offer ourselves, but that are available because students have very generously shared, or teachers that have very generously shared their materials with others. So any other questions before we go? I think we're pretty much out of time here, but I'll go quickly if we have some.
Yeah, I think this question, oh, we've just got another one. Erica asked, said that she can see it being a very helpful resource for school librarians. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Yeah. One thing that I just want to say that I put in the chat. So if you have any questions that we couldn't answer right now, or if you think of questions later, definitely feel free to write to our support email, or Larame's email is on the screen. I put my LinkedIn in the chat as well, just in case you want to connect and ask questions directly there. I'm happy to answer any questions about Flexi or our organization, or direct you to someone who could answer the question better than I.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope you have a fantastic day. Appreciate your time.
Thanks so much.